Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President, Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training. My special guest today is Norman Tweeboom, who is the Japan Regional Head for Bloomberg. And Norman, thank you very much. You've got beautiful offices here.
Thank you.
I've not been here before. It's fantastic. How is it that you're in Japan running Bloomberg? Give us a bit of a backstory on your career.
So, Greg, first of all, you and I have talked about doing this now for a while. And so I'm actually very glad that we can finally make it happen. Mm-hmm. And thank you in advance for the opportunity. How did I get here? And I think it's important to give you some context and background. I'm originally from the Dutch Caribbean, a small island called Curaçao. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up there in a very multicultural society. And so I do think that informs part of the journey I've been on. And early on, I would say my parents were instrumental in instilling a strong sense of values, doing the right thing, work ethic, accountability. And so those are still core principles that inform who I am as a person, and hopefully will continue to be a strong part of how I engage with people as well. I have also been fortunate enough to be able to live and work in different parts of the world. So I went to school in New York, university in New York, and started my career on Wall Street. Now I am dating myself, but way back in '89. Okay. And I first moved to Japan back in 2000. Oh, okay. So I've been now in the Asia Pacific region for the past 24 years, and have also had the opportunity to work in Hong Kong, as well as in Singapore. And I returned to Japan 3 years ago during COVID. I relocated back here with my family. And how did I join Bloomberg? I was working at an investment bank in Singapore, and the business that I was managing for that organization in Asia was acquired by Bloomberg back in 2016. So August this year, I'll be at Bloomberg for 8 years. Wow. So that's how the journey started. So I started with Bloomberg in Singapore, and late 2020, Bloomberg asked me to relocate to come run our Japan business. And so I moved my family up here in 2021. Today, the world is very different. Back in those days, quarantining, COVID, all of those challenges we went through, but very happy to be back in Japan, and very much appreciate the opportunity to run our business here.
And Bloomberg has been in Japan for quite a number of years.
We have. We have been in Japan this November, I believe, will be 37 years.
That's
and
amazing.
So it's the first office that we opened in the Asia Pacific region.
Right. And you've been through a number of roles in different companies and leading people.
Right.
And I'm just thinking back, when you first come to Japan, you start leading a Japanese team. And I'm sure, I'm just looking around at some of the people when I arrived, I see it's quite a multicultural company as well. So it's not just Japanese. But when you start leading in Japan, were there any things that sort of struck you that, this is as I expected, not as I expected, that type of any differences that you came across? Or basically you felt it's all the same?
I can see where people may think that leading in Japan is different, but my personal experience over the 3 decades or so that I've been in business and had the opportunity to lead teams, lead businesses, whether it was in New York, my first stint in Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, at the end of the day, people want to have an opportunity to learn. They want to work for an organization and a leader that will provide them with a career path. And ultimately, as they grow and scale their career, they want a manager that will give them the cover and has their back when they are looking to make important decisions, take a risk, even in business. And so those qualities to me, Greg, regardless of location, they travel. And so those are the philosophies that I try to apply to my team. And I haven't found that to be any different, whether it was in New York leading teams, here in Hong Kong or in Singapore. It's about motivating people. It's about getting them to buy into your philosophy. And it's that unity or cohesion of strategy. And can we all move in the same direction? And that's the role of a leader. And if the leader is able to create that environment where people believe, that's where the magic happens.
Just on that point about having an understanding of your philosophy, getting people to engage, to follow you as the leader is a critical part of leadership, obviously. And when you come in from outside, you may have been with Bloomberg in Singapore or wherever, that's fine. But when you get to Japan, this is Japan. And so people don't know you well. And so what did you find worked well to engage people to follow you when you got to Japan? Did you have like a 60-day plan or a 90-day plan, or how did you approach it?
And so, remember, I said I first moved here 24 years ago. And so it wasn't when I came back 3 years ago, it wasn't my first time in Japan. And despite being in both Hong Kong and Singapore, I did have regional responsibilities at the previous firms I was employed with. And so Japan was always a part of that. So I spent quite a bit of time in Japan. I am very fortunate, Greg. I met my wife here.
Oh, very nice.
She is Japanese. And so that obviously helps inform the cultural aspects as well of doing business. But as I said, whether it's in Japan, you're in Hong Kong, you're in Singapore, you're in the US, whether you're leading people or you're trying to grow businesses, it's about clear communication. It's about being accountable. It's about being adaptable to the different environments you're doing business in. But the values, the underlying values are common across. And if you exhibit that and are being authentic, I think it's, at least my experience has been that you will be successful.
It's often very common that at the top leadership level, there's a very clear direction, very clear philosophy, strategy, etc. is going forward. And one of the issues can often be that when you start coming down the levels, how well that gets communicated to people at the bottom, because you can often be sitting in the driver's seat at the top thinking, they've all got it.
Exactly.
I've told them, they know, I'm very clear, I'm very authentic, I've told them numbers of times. But then sometimes you find that someone at the bottom haven't got it, and somehow it hasn't trickled down as you expected. So what have you found works well to make sure that what you think is happening and the message that you're conveying are actually being truly conveyed to the very most junior, most newest recruit, or the newest recruit, I should say? So
it's critical that you have a strong leadership team under you. And I say that because they are carrying the message for you. But if you only leave that to them, that's where I think we get into a situation that you're referring to. And so something I do often is what I call skip level engagement. And I even do skip level engagement because it's very, very important to ensure that the message permeates throughout the organization. And whether it's with our new graduates that join the organization. In Japan, it's every April. Our interns, when they go to the internship program here in the summer, as they move into the sales organization, as they become experienced sales leaders, having that skip level engagement. First of all, you hear directly what's going on the ground. You are able to ensure that your message is also heard through your own voice, but then you're also able to check that the message that you believe should be coming down is indeed.
And so it's shocking when it isn't. It's like,
well, that means that either the message I'm communicating is not being fully understood, or that it's not being passed on to the team. Either way, there's work to do. It's quite common that I do skip level engagements.
Just on that skip level, a lot of times in Japanese organizations, I say Japanese organizations, they're multinational companies, but most of the staff are Japanese. And then you have foreign leaders coming in. And this skip level idea is common across a lot of different industries and companies. But sometimes, depending on how that's set up, it can create a bit of a tension because the Japanese leaders, particularly the skip level, become very nervous.
Right.
Oh, Norman's talking to my people. Are they talking about me? What are they saying about me? What did you tell them? What did you talk about? They get very nervous. So do you set that up in the sense of I'm going to manage my wandering around type of idea, skip level. I'm going to talk to people. It's not about you. I'm just trying to make sure my message is getting out there. I like to get the feedback from the field, and so that they are calm.
Right.
Or do you do it, you just turn up? I mean, how do you set that up?
So transparency, Greg, is very important. If people are not aware of what's going on, and all of a sudden they see you in a room with either their entire team, some of their team members, naturally the question may be, what's going on? But it is part and has been part of my management style from day one. I make sure that there are no surprises. People know where they stand. People know what I'm doing and the reason why I'm doing it. This is not about doing a sanity check on are they doing their work. It's to ensure the consistency of the message. And indeed, what I have found is that the different levels of the organization appreciate the fact that you are taking the time to spend with them, to get to know them, to understand the issues that drive them, the issues that motivate them, the challenges that they may have. And what I do then as well is play back with the leaders. This is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm hearing. So and occasionally you bring the leaders in.
Right.
I don't want them to feel that this is we're creating silos around them. The more information we have, the better we will be as an organization in driving strategy and in motivating our people. And at the end of the day, it is all about the people. You can have the best products, but if you don't have the best people, you're not going to be successful.
So Norman, when you start to have large numbers of people in the organization, obviously there's a scale issue around, there's only so many hours in the day for you as a busy executive, how many people you can actually physically get to in a year. And so how do you compensate for that scale issue when you get to scale?
Scale it to me, Greg, is about the communication again. And so it all comes back to, are you clearly communicating? Are you communicating with authenticity? And it has to be done consistently. If you only communicate once, the message doesn't permeate. And so at the end of the day, scale is important, yes. And the larger the organization, the more you have to do it. You rely on your leaders to make sure the message permeates through the organization. But every good leader has to take the time to get to know their organization and the commitment that you make to do that as consistently as possible is ultimately what will drive success from the bottom up.
So do you do things, for example, you've got your direct reports, I imagine like division heads, I'll call them division heads for want of a better term, who again, they're pushing the message down, hopefully to the very bottom. Are you also doing things like town halls, get everyone together? Are you doing things like, you're on video, giving reports, updates on what's going on? You're sending out sort of, broadcast emails, just updates, again, making sure that you've got that direct communication to people at all levels. What sort of things you found works best?
All of the above, really. And it even works globally for us. So there will be division, regional, global. You do it within your office. The different mediums that you use can be summaries, you do group meetings. I attend individual team meetings where I walk in and see the flow, have an agenda item. I meet with my leaders every week. I meet with them ad hoc. Remember what I said, surprises are not good. And through communication, constant, clear communication, you eliminate surprises. Somebody should know where they stand. Somebody should know when they're doing well. Equally, they should know the areas that they need to improve in. And that's the responsibility. And it's really incumbent on the leader to drive that culture. At the same time, you have to make sure that you're also holding yourself accountable. It cannot be, the direction cannot only be one way. If people feel that everything is flowing from this direction, there is no way for their voice to be heard, for their opinions to matter. That's why communication is a two-way street. And so that's something believe in. I want that from my manager. And so in return, I make sure that I give that to my team.
And are you using things like offsites with key leadership groups as well as a chance to work on that authentic one-to-one communication? Or is it, because your schedule, I imagine you're traveling, you're busy, these things are hard to organize regularly. How do you treat that opportunity?
There are different forums to do this in. Offsites will happen. The APAC leadership team will gather. We will bring the different business units together as well. One of the great things, Greg, that we learned coming out of COVID is that you can use technology. And certainly different type of video conferencing capabilities have now become available. And so we leverage all the tools that are available. Ultimately, it's about collaboration, it's about communication, and it's about creating that cohesion of driving the business forward. And you shouldn't leave any stone unturned to try to achieve that.
And what about idea generation? Because often, in particularly large organizations, there has to be hierarchies. And sometimes the ideas don't ever get scooped up or harvested, or they don't percolate up for whatever reason in companies. So, and often as you move up through the ranks, you get more into leadership and management and further away from what's going on at the sort of coal face. So you don't talk to the clients anymore because your people are talking to them. So you just get that little bit of separation from the business. So getting ideas from people, because they're there, they're listening to the clients, they're hearing what's going on in the market, but making sure those ideas get captured and therefore we can input those into the strategy. What have you found works well to get ideas from the bottom?
So one thing I do a lot of is client meetings. It's meeting clients directly.
Meeting clients directly yourself.
It's something I enjoy. It allows me to build the relationships that ultimately will drive decisions that the clients will make to engage us for their business needs. It gives me direct access to the information that's happening, what's driving Japan as a country, as an economy. And so it's probably the part of the job that I look forward to every single day, because you meet different executives. And Japan, as you know, Greg, having been here a number of years yourself, it's a collection of regions. And if you go to the west side of the country, it's different. If you go north, you go down south. I'm actually off to the west of Japan next week to meet customers. And so it's a part of the job I very much look forward to. Now you're hearing it from them. Does it align with what we are pushing, the message that we are delivering? And is that also something that's happening with our teams? And so I ensure that consistency by traveling with the team, meeting clients, myself individually, different forums. But it's all about ensuring that the consistency of message is delivered, and that our products and solutions cater to the needs of our clients.
You've been here a number of years. Are you, particularly when you get outside of Tokyo, are you able to have those meetings directly with the clients in Japanese? Or
Yes.
You are? Well, that's a fantastic advantage.
I speak a number of languages. Fortunately, as I said, I grew up in a very multicultural society. And so language continues to be, and language to me is communication. So there is that theme we keep coming back to. But if you are able to connect, and you connect with clients, Greg, based on what I call a mutual trust and respect. And by trying to really understand their business, their challenges, where they are today, where are they looking to go? And if you can build up that mutual trust and respect relationship, you can get business done. And again, that to me travels regardless of location. When you go to the regions in Japan, you see how diverse the country really is. And that to me is fascinating. And I try to make sure that I see the different parts of our businesses, because at the end of the day, Japan is not only Tokyo.
Yes. Well, when I was here the first time as a student, I spent 6 years here in Tokyo, and I thought Japan was Tokyo.
Right.
Then I came back the third time. I was based in Nagoya for 4 years and then Osaka for 4 years. And I realized, okay, Japan is not equaling Tokyo. There's more to it than that.
There's more to it.
So it's more than that.
Right.
But apart from your ability to interact directly with clients, across the country, coming back to, people who are at the sort of coalface themselves in the business, getting their ideas out, getting the trickle up to you at your level, have you found anything that works well to do that?
It's to ensure that they feel that their voice matters. Mm-hmm. And so in my team here, giving them the platform. Mm-hmm. This is not leadership to me at the end of the day, Craig. It's not the title. Mm-hmm. It's the behavior. Mm-hmm. People don't follow titles, they follow people. Mm-hmm. And so if you behave in a certain way, you create an environment where people feel that they matter, that their voice can be heard, their ideas can be shared. Mm-hmm. And in an honest fashion, meaning if it's a good idea, we will implement it. Mm-hmm. That, to me, is the magic. And if you can achieve that, that's where the cohesion happens, that's where the unity of thought happens, and then they align with you. And so you have to create that environment. And we have smart people. Mm-hmm. I always say the single best asset that we have here it's our people. Mm-hmm. And so we invest in them. Mm-hmm. We ensure that they are provided with opportunities to grow and develop their career. And you do that, among other things, by making sure their voice is heard. And so I cannot do what I do without my people, for sure. And they allow you to create scale. They allow you to grow the business. And I am extremely proud to be able to lead this team each and every single day because they're fantastic. They really are.
And that's a terrific asset to have that. In terms of building trust, you've been in Japan a couple of times now, and you've worked in other locations as well. But thinking back to when you first came, your first experience in Japan, Japan's got a very specific culture. Mm-hmm. And trust is important everywhere. Right. And I think Japan particularly, I think trust is very important. What did you find worked well to build trust with people when you first came in, and things that you found subsequently have been helpful to build trust with teams?
The authenticity to me is important, to really try to understand the client in the time you take. Mm-hmm. You cannot fly in and expect business to get done right away. The loyalty here it's extremely important. And how you build that by understanding the challenges, by being genuine in the solutions that you try to offer, and ensuring that they see you as a long-term partner. And so here, attention to detail matters. Post-sale follow-up, execution, implementation, all of these are qualities that, again, matter everywhere, perhaps here even more so. And so the attention to detail, do what you say and then say what you will do. It is so critical to success in Japan in particular. And you are able to deliver on that. It's amazing the depth of relationships that you're able to build. And so that's the philosophy that I try to instill across my team. It's certainly the philosophy I live by. Service levels, service quality here is extremely high. And the expectations are that you're able to meet those.
And what about internally, in terms of, that's talking about partnering with clients, but if you think about internally with your teams or people working with you, what have you found from your first time and recent time, things that work well to build trust internally?
Right. And so I try to synthesize it, Greg, to the simple, what am I bringing to them? What do they get out of working with me, for me? And sometimes I ask myself this, it's a very philosophical question, but I ask myself in a quiet period, do I want to work for me?
Okay.
What's so good about working for me? And so it's almost an out-of-body experience. I sit across from myself at the table and then ask myself, is it still great. Am I still bringing knowledge, value, cohesion, communication? Because if you arguably don't want to work for yourself, then why should everybody else or anybody else want to work for you? Now, you may say, of course, I'm going to say, yes, I'm a great leader to work for. But in actuality, it's a good milepost to check yourself against from time to time. Because if you are not able to then articulate what it is that you bring, then the message is not going to get through. And so I'm always holding myself to account to make sure that is still the case. And I think so far the answer is yes.
It's a good point. I mean, there are many leaders who don't have that view. They are dictators,
right?
Particularly if they're owners, and they see people as dispensable, interchangeable. You sack one, put another one in there, pay them enough money, to get to work. So they don't have that human connection concept at all. Right. It's more of a transactional concept, and they rule by fear and drive people very, very hard. And you've obviously probably coming from Wall Street, I'm sure you saw plenty of that when you were younger. And it's obviously you've concluded that's probably not the way to go. In terms of culture, because you have a global Bloomberg culture, you have a Japan culture, you have Bloomberg in Japan culture, and then you have Norman culture. So what have you found works well to build culture in organizations?
To me, you have to be authentic.
When you say authentic, just expand on that a little bit, because I think I can understand what you mean by authentic, but just to make sure we're clear, what are the aspects of authenticity that you're thinking of here?
So authenticity is about the clear communication I mentioned. It's about the accountability. So for argument's sake, you're always telling people what to do, but you don't do any of these things yourself. And so pretty soon, people will start to question, oh, so it's great. He's saying do A, B, C, but he doesn't do any of these, has never exhibited these qualities, yet expects us to. And so that's where I say the accountability piece comes in. Let people know what your expectations are of them. But more importantly, in return, what can they expect from you? And that is delivered through communication, clear communication. It's also important to be vulnerable. Correct, I don't know everything. And a leader that tells you they know everything is either lying or has never actually tried enough, because you have to have also gone through failure to emerge as a better and stronger leader. And so that builds resiliency. It builds a fountain of knowledge and wisdom that you can rely on. And so if you show me somebody that's never failed, I will show you somebody that's never tried.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. Well, Churchill had a great saying on it, and he says, it's good that you failed, it shows you tried, and it's good to have enemies, you show that you're doing things. And so in terms of that vulnerability and failure, etc., I mean, there is always that issue, I think, particularly when you first become a leader, that you feel, oh, I have to be bulletproof, I have to be perfect. If I admit my failings, my vulnerabilities, people are thinking, well, why are you in that chair? I should be in that chair. You should be out. And so you're trying to protect yourself from that type of pressure by, I'm all knowing, all capable, all seeing.
Right.
But at some point, as you get a bit older, I guess you start to relax a bit on that, and you realize that vulnerability is just admitting your human nature.
Right.
And in terms of, where's the balance there between having people retain enough confidence in what you're able to do as a leader, but on the other hand, not saying I'm all perfect?
Right. I think you struck the nail on the head, because if you think you know everything, or at least you come across as you know everything, over time, it will expose you. Anyway, you also come in and say, sorry guys, I'm not sure why I'm here. I don't know anything. I was just put in this position. There goes credibility. Nobody's going to buy into your vision. And so be comfortable and confident in who you are, in what you know. But equally important, know what you don't know. And don't be afraid to ask. And so I'm very comfortable with telling my team there are things they know better than me. And there are things that I can hopefully bring to the table. And if we can combine those two, that's the beauty, isn't it? Because that's when you unlock value. That's when you unlock the possibilities that exist. And so vulnerability is absolutely a quality that managers should have. And the other piece I will say, surround yourself with the best people. As a matter of fact, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. And that's really where the growth will come from. And so if you think you're the smartest person in the room, I would argue you're in the wrong room.
In the wrong room. And what about mistakes? Because you've lived here long enough to know that this is a no defect, no mistake, no error culture. And often clever CFOs based overseas will look at the business and say, you know what, 100% no defects, it's going to make this much money. 3% defect rate will make more money. So no problem, we'll have a 3% defect rate, we'll tolerate it. But, minimum viable product doesn't work tremendously well there, because the Japanese receiver of the service or product expects it to work perfectly from the very start. So when you've got this sort of built-in Japanese perfectionism, real attention to detail that you mentioned before, how do you balance that out internally to allow people the freedom to make mistakes? Because the culture is driving them to not make mistakes and to fear making mistakes. But that kernel of the mistake is learning and experimentation and progress. So how do you strike that balance?
So for me, mistakes are part of the journey. It's part of the learning process. And again, if you don't make a mistake, chances are you didn't try, or certainly you didn't try hard enough. And so what I have found works well is if you make a mistake, let me rephrase, when you make a mistake, because it's going to happen, a few things have to happen right away. First of all, acknowledge. Sorry, I made a mistake. Apologize. And only then we can start the moving on process. But then ensure that you follow up and deliver on the fix. And so the ability to be honest, acknowledge the mistake, apologize for it, then fix it. That is something that I know for a fact that works, and it can also build credibility. I have never run across a client at a business engagement that expected perfection. Mistakes can happen. We said mistakes do happen. What you have to do is correct the mistakes, be honest, open about them upfront, own the mistake, apologize, fix it. And the other part, Greg, that goes a long way is by having constant communication with clients along the timelines of the projects. So that if you anticipate there's going to be a delay, something is not on track, communicate. Because with communication, the client is then able to manage on their side. Nobody wants to receive the message, oh, by the way, something was due today, and it's not happening. And now I'm scrambling.
But don't worry, you'll get it tomorrow.
Yeah, well, we don't know, right? Because trust has been. And so the ability to be honest, acknowledge, apologize, now we can start the process of moving on. And
Mm.
so those are the principles that I think will give you the best opportunity to be successful.
And again, we talked before about, at the top of the tree here, on the steering wheel, you have a philosophy, standards, you have a thought about this, mistakes are part of growth, etc. We all learn from our mistakes. In any big organization, particularly in Japan, the difficulty is making sure that at the bottom that is being handled. We teach leadership, obviously, and I remember one of the gentlemen, he's probably in his 40s, was relating that when he was younger, he made some error. His Japanese boss was so angry, he threw an ashtray at his head. Wow. Being scolded in Japan by your boss, bawled out by your boss in front of everybody, that's a reality still in a lot of companies. It's like, wow. I mean, I'm sure in multinational companies that's not going to work. So thinking about making sure that philosophy that you have, that freedom to not consistent errors of the same thing repeatedly, right. That's a different problem, but that freedom to experiment, to try, to challenge is at the very bottom as well. Right. How do you ensure that's actually happening?
So I don't believe you can manage through fear. And fear is, I make a mistake, the guy's going to throw an ashtray at my head. I'm not a buyer into that philosophy at all. I don't want to work for somebody or organization that allows that to happen. And so I certainly don't exhibit that type of behavior. The only way, in my opinion, that you can be successful is through that collaboration. And the collaboration has to come from all parts of the organization. They have to feel that their contributions matter, that they are important. Every cog of the wheel, Greg, matters. If not, it becomes, as they call it, a squeaky wheel. They say the squeaky wheel needs oil, and we're not moving in a smooth fashion. And so communication, driving the communication through all parts of the organization, making sure that it's top down, bottom up, that people feel that this is a place where they genuinely, their contributions are acknowledged and rewarded, and they feel that there's a career path that is provided to them. It is, sometimes I think we try to complicate this too much. It is really, that simple. And if you look over time at successful organizations, it's the ones that provide that environment where people feel, I wake up in the morning, I'm genuinely looking forward to coming in because I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the people I do it with. And I'm in an organization that provides me with the opportunities to grow and develop every single day. And 3 decades on, those are still qualities that drive me. And so I am at that stage in my career now where it's about returning, the giving back, the leading the next generation to show them what's possible. And it's very, very important that you feel that that's part of your responsibility. And so that's what drives and motivates me, because when we're successful, it is because of the teamwork. It is about the efforts that every single individual brought to the table, and that's what allows us to elevate.
Sometimes when you have that philosophy at the top about mistakes are part of the learning process, and you think you've communicated that, in some cases, some leaders will sort of very pinpoint, will celebrate mistakes.
Right.
Because they're recognizing someone went above and beyond and stepped out of their comfort zone and took a risk, and now it failed. But they celebrate the activity, and what they're trying to demonstrate to the rest of the team is, I say these things, I believe these things, and I'm showing you I do these things, so we're not punishing these people. It's one of those things. I remember I read a story about Lee Iacocca when they launched one of the vehicles. They had a total failure on the launch. The marketing completely failed. And the head of marketing was called up to see Lee Iacocca, and the guy came in, you can imagine, typical American fashion, expecting to get fired. Right. And Iacocca said to the guy, fire you? We just spent $5 million educating you. Now, you can imagine that story is going to percolate right to the bottom of Chrysler at that time. And people go, wow, the thing was a failure. But, they sort of, that's the proof of the pudding to people, isn't it? So have you had any things like that, any stories like that, or examples like that that's worked for you?
So, it's funny because what businesses, teams tend to do is always, let's celebrate the success. Let's celebrate the win. Let's talk about, we won this deal, what worked. It's rare that you say, we lost this deal for these and these reasons. And so we do a lot of these reviews. What did not work? Why did we not? What was the gap? Where did we fall short? Because through failure, you learn. Now, it cannot be in this environment of, as I said before, fear. Because otherwise, it never surfaces. And so you use these as teaching moments. You use them to ensure that we are better next time. It's an opportunity for us to learn and improve. So, as I said before, mistakes are going to happen. I have children, teenage daughters, and I always tell them, I can live with a mistake because you tried. What I have a problem with is if the mistake repeats itself.
Not learning.
Because then we didn't learn anything. And so that's problematic. But if you make a mistake, it's because you tried. And that I can live with. Now, the more you advance, hopefully you have a stronger foundation that you can learn from to try to avoid mistakes. A firm that always makes mistakes is not going to be around long enough. But if there are zero mistakes, we said it before, that meant they weren't aspirational enough in their endeavors. And so they didn't try to be the best they can be. So I can live with, because it was an example of trying, but then we review, we analyze, we learn, and we come back better, we come back stronger.
What about someone called you up, say, hey, Norman, I've got the big job in Japan. They're going to send me over here or send me over there to run the organization. And, Norman, you've been in Japan forever. How can I be an effective leader in Japan? What advice would you give them?
Be open-minded, that it takes time to build relationships here. It's an amazing country to live in. It's an amazing country to do business in. The spirit of the Japanese people, I talked about loyalty, attention to detail. These are all things that I find fascinating here. And come in, be very focused on trying to get to understand Japan. There's knowledge that you will bring. There's a reason firms are sending people here. But you have to also be open-minded to know what you don't know about Japan, and then be willing to ask and genuinely be willing to learn. And if you do that, the relationships you're able to form here will last you a lifetime. I have relationships here today still, Craig, that I formed 20 years ago when I first moved here. And they remember. And so that to me is the advice I would give to any leader coming into Japan today. And we know, given what's happening in the markets, what's happening with the macroeconomic environment, that there are a lot of firms coming back into Japan.
And thanks to Warren Buffett.
Among others, both you and I have spent significant amount of time in Japan. I do think that the environment is really different this time, and that we are poised to hopefully see a sustained period of growth. So I'm very optimistic about Japan in general. I'm certainly very bullish about our business in Japan, and I welcome the opportunity to continue to lead and grow the business here of Bloomberg in Japan.
And so, apart from that advice of being open, is there anything particularly practical you can think of that would be something that may not occur to them because they're coming from a different culture, a different business environment. But in Japan, this practically works very well. Any practical advice for them?
I would say, again, be yourself, first and foremost. Be authentic. But understand that the cultural differences, here the business card, for instance, is something that is ubiquitous. It's your calling card, how you exchange it, the rhythms of doing business here, being polite, listening, understanding the nuances of how business is being done here. But the Japanese client, the European client, the American client, Hong Kong, you name it, their goal is to grow their business. I have yet to meet somebody that says, I don't want to grow my business. And so how can you build a relationship with this person to feel that your services, your solutions can be additive to their process, to take them, as I said before, from where they are today to where they want to go. And if you can demonstrate value, that's how you win the business.
Should they learn Japanese?
Ideally, yes. And by the way, technology today, to be fair, has made it a lot easier. When I would think it's the same case for you. When we moved here 2 decades ago, the smartphone didn't even exist yet.
No.
And so back then, you were almost forced to learn the language. Otherwise, it made communication, travel, getting around Japan even more difficult. Today, a lot have been invested in the digital transformation that the government is promoting. There are announcements in different languages here if you're on the train. Technology has made it a lot easier now through different GPS services. You can pretty much go from A to B.
Which wasn't so easy before.
It wasn't.
Because the way Japanese streets are laid out.
Exactly. It wasn't as logical. Mysterious, correct. And so there's some of the best restaurants are in a very tiny back alley. And if you didn't know where it was or how to get there, you now, as long as you have the postcode, you have the address. It's rare, even outside of Tokyo. It's rare that you cannot get from point A to point B. But I would argue again, in every society, if you're doing business, knowing the language is important. But my experience with senior Japanese executives across the industries that we cover and support, their familiarity and understanding with English is
pretty high.
Yes, and so you're able to connect, you're able to engage, you're able to build trust and respect, and therefore build relationships.
And in terms of, we have the ups and downs of business. You came during COVID, right? Who could anticipate a COVID? I mean, I was here and we thought, it's going to be Asia flu Mark II. Japan will just gracefully and elegantly skid through that, won't be a problem. It was a problem. But, you have recessions. We got 2 wars going on, one in the Middle East and one in Europe. Again, you wouldn't anticipate that necessarily. So what things have you found for yourself personally that helps you to stay resilient?
So for me, exercise is something I live by. I try to do it consistently 4 or 5 times a week. I try to do it early in the morning, get it out of the way. I usually wake up early anyway. Latest I'm up is 5:30, and that means up and out of the house by 5:30. And that's my quiet time. I get a run in.
Phone calls, no interruptions.
And so, and that gives me time to reset, time to balance. It's also important to spend time with family. As I said, I have 2 teenage daughters. They're at that stage where education is obviously quite important. We're starting to think about next level. And so spending time communicating, trying to find things that we do together as a family. I enjoy playing golf, and so that gives me time to be outdoors as well. By the way, another great way to form relationships here in Japan with senior executives. And so the discipline around having an exercise routine, being conscious of your diet is important. Getting enough rest. And so trying to balance all of those things are qualities and habits that I try to live by. And so, yeah, exercise would be top of mind in terms of getting time to unwind and have a period, a block of time in the day where it's me and how hopefully the body is cooperating that day, so that I can give maximum effort and come back and get ready for the day.
It's also, I guess, have you found that you have certain rhythms in the day? I also get up early, but I tell my team, don't ask me for anything creative after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because I'm not at my best. You want something creative, come back tomorrow morning, I'll be on fire.
Right.
But now, no, that's not how my rhythm works. I know that about myself.
Right.
So I try to avoid doing those sorts of high concentration, detailed, numbers orientated or creative things when I know that's not a good time for me to do that. But have you found that for yourself? You got rhythms in the day for yourself?
I'm fairly active throughout the day because the nature of the business demands it. But what the trust relationship I do have with my team is I'm available, but I also trust you guys to make the judgments and decisions for your business. And you can reach me if I need to. I have my phone with me. But if you have to check every single decision with me, then again, I put that onus on me. I have not empowered you enough to make decisions. So accessible, yes. Available, yes. But with the understanding that call me if there's really a reason. And so that block of time, that call it an hour or so that I give myself in the morning, yes, if something is going on, I will make myself available. But they also know that that's, my quiet time. For the rest of the day, it's very important, Craig, that we prioritize. Everything is not an emergency every single day. Cannot be. And so you need to prioritize your time. You need to prioritize the things that you're going to focus on. And you do that by ensuring that you empower your team to be able to make decisions, because that's the only way you create scale. If you have to be involved in every single decision, you're going to be, I always say 24 hours a day are given to everybody. It's how we use them.
Well, the whole point about delegation is that's a tool to develop people.
Absolutely.
As it's not a tool to dump your stuff on their desk so you don't have to do it. It's helping them to grow up in the position to the next level and give them the capacity to experience something that they will be doing at the next level before they get there. In terms of, you talked about exercise, getting up early. These are obviously some disciplines you've worked out. Any other good, and eating carefully, etc. Any other habits that have served you well over the years in business that you can think of, apart from those?
So to me, effort is 100% within your control. Some of us are smarter. Some of us, if it's athletics, are more physically gifted. But all of us have the ability and the ability really to work hard. And so that to me drives and motivates me, because I say, so if somebody's outworking me, that's a problem, because that's on me. So I think effort is probably a quality that to me is non-negotiable. And so I don't understand lazy people, because it's effort. And 24 hours, if I need to work an extra hour, I'll put in the time to make sure that the results are there. And that's a philosophy that whether you are smart, talented, physically gifted, the effort part is 100% controllable. And I try to ensure that I adhere to that. And if I feel at the end of the day, when I lay my head down on the pillow at night, and I ask myself, did I give it my all today? And if the answer is yes, then I'm at peace. I can live with the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any doubt, then why do you expect to succeed and to win? And so that's my driving philosophy.
What would be your definition of leadership?
There are a couple. I would say adaptability, because things change. You have to be accountable. I mentioned that before. Clear communication. Those would be really the top three for me. And again, a leader that gives you a bushel full of qualities, which one? For me, communication, accountability, adaptability are key, and they transcend business, they transcend industry, and they also show up in your personal life. And at the end of the day, that's what I want from my manager, and so I try my very best to ensure I provide that, to my team, and give them the hope and the opportunity that they're growing and developing, and that collectively we are all moving in the same direction, and success will then, come.
Can I ask you about that pin on
Yes.
your jacket there?
Maybe I can ask you about yours.
Well, mine is the DNC symbol of Dale Carnegie. It's a
Okay.
corporate badge.
Right.
We all have it. But just tell me a little bit about that. It's a very
It's just
unique looking badge.
It's just a fashion accessory.
Okay.
No special meaning. By the way, I do think the way you present yourself is also a quality that leaders need to have. And so doesn't mean you have to every day wear a suit. I do most of the days, but it's the presence that you carry when you walk into a room, and some people call it executive presence, others call it gravitas, but when you walk in, do people pay attention? Is this somebody I want to hear from? I haven't heard him speak yet. I don't know who he or she is, but there's a presence about them, and that's another quality that it's harder to identify. It's perhaps more difficult to develop, but I think it's a quality that most strong and good leaders have. And it's, by the way, it's not about being loud. It's not about pounding the table. It's not about, it's me. It's a quiet confidence. Maybe it's the best way to describe it, that I know who I am. I know what I know. I also know what I don't know. But I'm here to learn, and I'm here to do it together with the team. And people respond to that.
Well, you look very sharp.
Oh, thank you.
I have to
Likewise.
say. Yeah, well, I started a blog called Fare Bella Fugida.
Which means
Make a good impression.
It's a good impression. Right.
And the obvious idea there is, before we even speak,
Right.
people are making a judgment about us. So what I'm trying to say in this blog is, well, control that.
Exactly.
And look at your schedule every day and determine, okay, what impression do I want to have for a particular event during that day or events?
Right.
And I dress accordingly, as opposed to what's clean, what's available, and to have purpose, have intention.
Exactly.
Because yes, once you open your mouth, that's another level of impression, but they're already making a snap judgment.
Absolutely.
And people have got such short attention spans today. You've got to take that into consideration too. So when you walked in before, I thought, oh wow, it looks very professional.
No,
So
there's something we call TPO, time, place, occasion.
yes.
And
yes.
so be mindful of that and represent yourself in that fashion. You're absolutely right. Human beings, by definition, are creatures that will make a first impression visually.
Yeah.
Again, we haven't heard him or her say anything yet. We don't know the subject matter expertise that they may have, but we form impressions visually. And so it's important that you think in that capacity, and that you carry that presence with you.
Norman, thank you.
It's my pleasure. This is
Wonderful.
I really enjoyed it. I can't imagine. It's amazing that the time has flown by.
Yeah, really.
This quickly. Thank you for the opportunity. As I said at the beginning, something we I'm happy we were able to do it. I know we talked about it previously, so
We
thank you
made
for
it
the
happen.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. So please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.